The world surrounding Lex Cardin was a landscape of lethal cold and silence. Razor-sharp winds slashed across the surface of Outpost Delta 14, a place that was once a hub of research for the Human Alliance, now reduced to desolate corridors shrouded in frost, darkness, and the lingering memories of those who had vanished without a trace. Lex's footsteps pressed deep into the icy ground, his boots echoing with a distinct, solitary clack, the only sign of life remaining in this forsaken sector. On his wrist, the personal radar flickered erratically, a faint, broken signal pulsing from somewhere beneath the lower levels, almost snuffed out in the sub-basement, where the temperature had dropped to a level fatal for any living being. Lex paused in the fifth corridor, where the emergency lights flickered a dying red. He bent down, raising his sensor toward the hatch that led to the technical underlevels. Why would anyone be down there at this hour? Lex muttered, one hand gripping his stun gun, the other sliding across the display. Patrols like this usually yielded nothing more than frozen samples or the corpses of stray alien creatures. Never before had he found signs of intelligent life. And yet that weak, desperate beep continued, each pulse sounding more like a cry for help. Descending the spiral staircase, Lex entered an old machine room. Beneath a thick sheet of ice, a small, curled-up figure lay amidst pale streaks of vapor on the floor. Her skin glimmered with a faint blue-silver sheen. The girl was nearly naked, dressed only in a torn scrap of cloth around her body. Her long white hair clung to her cheeks, her lips blue and trembling, her lashes sealed tight as if she had just been pulled back from death itself. The instant Lex saw her, he froze. Instinct overrode hesitation. Without time to think, he hurriedly took off his only insulated jacket and wrapped it around the frail form. His hands shook as he pressed his fingers to her wrist, checking for a pulse, so faint, so fragile it was like holding a scrap of paper. But suddenly her own fingers gripped his wrist, no more than a last reflex. Her voice was so thin it barely carried, almost nothing but a breath. "Don't let them find me, please. Tell them I'm your mate." She struggled to open her eyes and look at him, and in those gray-silver irises Lex saw despair, terror, and a sliver of hope too fragile to name. He didn't even have time to ask why before her body went completely limp. Lex didn't hesitate. He lifted the strange girl in his arms, tightening the jacket around her while activating the emergency heating mode on his wristband, trying desperately to force some warmth into her frozen body. As he hurried back through the snow-choked halls, a storm of questions tumbled through his mind. Who was she? Why was she here? Why the plea to pretend to be her husband? But more than that, there was a strange, electric feeling rising inside Lex, a tenderness he had never permitted himself to feel for anyone in this cold, unfeeling universe. Back at the makeshift medical bay, Lex laid the girl on the examination table, his hands adjusting the temperature controls and checking her vital signs. Gradually, the blue in her lips faded to a pale pink. Scratches on her skin shimmered like pearls under the dim light. A female medic approached, suspicion in her eyes. "Who is she, Lex?" Lex met his colleague's gaze, his breath catching in his throat, but he did not betray any hint of anxiety. "Esrin Vale. She's my designated mate, according to the Interspecies Integration Program, Alliance Security Protocol." A brief silence hung in the air before the medic nodded, quickly setting up an IV for Esrin and scanning her biodata. "If she's your mate, she'll be exempted from the species origin screening. But you do realize this is irregular without full records." Lex didn't blink. "We were just paired on the system. I'll provide the documentation once she's out of danger." It seemed to go smoothly, but Lex knew he'd just stepped into dangerous territory. Alliance regulations on interspecies relationships were strict, especially for those with a history of conflict. Yet Lex had no choice. He sat quietly beside the sickbed, studying Esrin's face in the pale light, wondering what could have driven her to flee to the furthest reaches of this frozen world. Night fell. The room was filled with nothing but the gentle hum of the respirator and the shrieking of the wind against the frosted window. Just as Lex finally let himself close his eyes for a moment, Esrin suddenly jolted upright, eyes wide, panting as if ripped from a nightmare. The blanket slipped from her shoulders, revealing delicate scars and the deep marks of restraint on her wrists. Lex moved instantly to her side, gently holding her trembling hand. "You're safe now. I'm Lex, the one who brought you here." Esrin looked at him, her silver eyes a swirl of fear and wariness. "What did you tell them?" "I said you were my mate, assigned by the Alliance." A flash of shock lit up Esrin's gaze. "Do you realize what that means?" Lex nodded softly. "It means you're allowed to stay, no scans or deportation. It means I just broke about a dozen security codes." Esrin fell silent, then murmured as if to herself, "Thank you, but you shouldn't have saved me. They won't spare anyone who hides me." Lex held her gaze, feeling the pain and despair beneath her resilient facade. "I didn't save you just to hand you over. I don't care about the rules. I only care about keeping a promise to someone who begged me when she was nearly dead." A hush settled over them. Esrin's hand trembled as she squeezed Lex's, as if clinging to a fragile thread of life in an endless winter. Lex felt the warmth radiating from her skin, so unfamiliar, so different, and yet it awakened something in his heart that had been dormant for too long. That same evening, Lex received a notice from Base Command. Verification required for mate records. Both parties to report in the morning for interspecies integration protocol screening. Lex sighed, holding the message in his hands. He knew that if they gave themselves away in any way through gestures, scent, hormone levels, or biological responses, both would be exposed as imposters. When he returned to their room, Lex found Esrin sitting against the wall, staring off into the distance. "They'll run a bioscan tomorrow morning. We have to." Before he could finish, Esrin cut him off in a whisper. "They'll check for pheromone traces and symbiotic markers. We have to be intimate as if it were real." Lex hesitated, his throat dry as he met her eyes. Esrin rose slowly, stepping so close that only a hand's breadth remained between them. Lex could smell her, something uniquely hers, sweet and sharp and inexplicably intoxicating. Esrin cupped his face with both hands, her voice trembling but resolute. "If you want to survive, you have to show them I truly belong to you, not just on paper." Her hand slid down to Lex's neck, drawing him down. The instant their lips touched, the world seemed to stop. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a transfer of fear, hope, and survival between two strangers bound together by a life-or-death lie. Lex felt her lips, cold as ice but burning with a hidden flame that never died. When they broke apart, Esrin's eyes had softened, her hand still wrapped around his neck, holding him close to her warm chest. The two sat together in the dim light, bodies entwined like the last survivors at the edge of the universe, with no room left for boundaries or prejudice. No more words were needed. Lex understood that tonight they weren't just pretending for the world. They would have to learn to trust one another, or be swallowed up together by the darkness with no escape. Dawn on Novaris 6 was never gentle. Electric blue light slashed through the layers of ice, exposing every scar, every trace of survival inside Outpost Delta 14. The shrill blare of the morning alarm echoed down empty corridors, as if to remind everyone that every breath, every choice could be a final one. Lex Carden woke up with Esrin's arm wrapped around his chest. The sensation of her body pressed close, her skin cool yet so alive, sent his heart racing in a way that unsettled him. He had survived countless nights on duty, sleeping on shuddering decks, surrounded by the chaos of war, but he had never felt so at once peaceful and tense as this. Esrin was still asleep, lips parted slightly, her breath even and calm. When Lex shifted gently, she opened her eyes, the silver in them flickering first with caution, then softening as she recognized who lay beside her. "Good morning," Lex whispered, forcing a smile, hoping to dispel the tension. Esrin didn't reply right away. She was silent for a long while, then slowly stretched, her silver hair falling over her shoulder, glimmering in the icy sunlight from the window. "We have to play our parts well this morning," she murmured, her voice rough. "If we fail, it won't be just me they'll hunt." Lex nodded. He understood better than anyone the cost of a single lie, especially when facing the Alliance's multi-layered bioverification systems. But now there was no turning back. They were both all in on this gamble, and the slightest misstep could cost them their lives. He helped Esrin slip into his oversized shirt, both to hide the strange scar on her back and to heighten their intimacy in front of the review board. She hesitated when the fabric touched her skin, her eyes catching his for a moment, and a faint smile flickered there, a mix of shyness and gratitude. "How well can you pretend?" she whispered, tilting her head slightly as she studied Lex. He gave a faint, sardonic grin, pulling her close and murmuring, "As long as you play along, they'll never tell what's real and what's fake." The bioinspection room was awash with harsh white LED light. 2 staff members awaited them, one an android, the other a stern-faced female technician. "Lex Carden and Esrin Vale, please confirm your interspecies bond according to the Alliance Integration Protocol," the android intoned. Lex squeezed Esrin's hand tightly, feeling the slight tremor in her body, though her gaze had gone cold and proud, no trace of vulnerability. He knew that in this moment they were no longer just pretending. They were betting everything on each other. The technician swept a scanner over them, blue light passing from their wrists to their chests, to the neck, where symbiotic hormones and pheromones could betray any secret. Suddenly, the device emitted a prolonged beep. Lex shot a quick glance at Esrin. Her silver eyes flashed with panic, quickly suppressed. "Pair bond hormone levels, highly abnormal," the android announced. "Likelihood of biological integration exceeds the average for cross-species couples. Please proceed with physical contact verification." The female technician watched them with strict but not unkind eyes. "Have you two truly bonded?" Lex swallowed. He drew Esrin close, leaned down, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, soft enough to avoid suspicion, but real enough for the scanner to pick up their exchanged warmth and scent. Esrin suddenly looped her arms around Lex's neck, pulling him even closer, her lips grazing his ear as she whispered just for him, "Don't be afraid. I won't let them doubt us." She brushed her lips over his, just a fleeting touch, cold as wind across a frozen desert, but it left Lex shaken inside, unsure whether it was fear or something far more dangerous. The scanner flashed green, indicating that their bonding had met the official threshold. The technician jotted notes, glancing once at the scar on Esrin's wrist, but said nothing further. "Congratulations to you both. Lex, remember to submit all your paperwork soon." The door slid closed, and Lex exhaled shakily, his mind spinning. Even if it was all just a charade, the feeling of Esrin clutching him, the way she kissed him of her own volition, had ignited a slow-burning fire in his chest unlike any he'd felt before. Her lips, her strange scent, the softness of her body veiling a hidden strength, all of it made Lex feel as if he might lose his mind every time he let go of her. They left the inspection room and returned silently to their quarters. Esrin dropped onto the edge of the bed, her bare feet trembling, arms wrapped around her shoulders as if trying to banish a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Lex sat beside her, hesitantly reaching out to touch her back. "Are you all right?" Esrin gave a faint smile and shook her head. "I've been running for too long, Lex. Always pretending, always afraid of being found out. I can't even remember the last time someone held me just because I was me." Lex could feel the loneliness and anxiety woven through every word. He pulled Esrin into his arms, letting her rest her head on his chest. "Now, even if it's just make-believe, you're not alone anymore." For a long time, neither of them spoke, the only sound the echo of their heartbeats. Lex could feel Esrin's breath growing warmer against his skin, her hand searching for his, their fingers lacing together like perfectly fitting puzzle pieces. That night, as Delta 14 fell back into its habitual dead quiet, Neither Lex nor Esrin could sleep. Beyond the window, snow fell thick and fast. The wind howled in mournful waves, as if the whole world was grieving. The soft gold light of the lamp spilled across the blanket, turning all the sharp edges of reality into gentle blur. Esrin turned to look at Lex, her silver eyes full of unnamed longing. You know, my kind never truly bond with anyone outside our own species, but I still remember the forbidden stories of those who dared to cross the line. They either died or became something no one could understand. Lex gently brushed back her hair, kissing the scar on her neck. Are you afraid of changing? She shook her head quietly, squeezing his hand tighter. I'm only afraid of losing the only warmth I have left. The space between them narrowed to a single breath. For the first time, Lex leaned in of his own will, his lips brushing Esrin's, not to fool any scanner but to silence the rising anxiety in them both. Her lips were soft, icy but burning too, carrying the salt of melting snow and the sweet taste of a new feeling blossoming between two souls who thought they'd lost all faith. When Lex pulled back, Esrin let out a shuddering breath, her eyes still closed, breath uneven. Aren't you scared? Of course, Lex whispered, his lips grazing her neck. Scared of everything, but more scared of losing you. She opened her eyes, searching his, then gently pulled him down onto the bed beside her, her fingers tracing along his spine, each touch searing through the winter cold. That night in their tiny frost-laced quarters, their bodies entwined, seeking warmth and comfort, banishing fear. There was no longer any difference between real and pretend, just two damaged souls clinging to each other for one last taste of life. The next morning, Lex awoke to find Esrin still resting her head on his chest, her hair splayed across the blanket. Her eyes were softer now, her breath deep and even. But that peace was short-lived, shattered by the blaring of the emergency alarm outside. Unauthorized entry in the maintenance sector. Lex jumped up instantly, a surge of dread rising in his chest. He looked at Esrin. Her eyes were wide open, panic in their depths. She squeezed his hand, whispering with a tremor, "They're here, Lex. They've picked up my trail." And just like that, the fragile warmth of the night shattered under the pounding of an urgent knock. A new escape was about to begin, and this time there would be no more pretending, only the raw, unforgiving fight for survival, with no mercy for a single mistake. The blaring alarms thundered through Delta 14, drowning out every familiar sound of the outpost. Under the pulsing red glow of the emergency system, Lex and Esrin exchanged a single look of steely resolve. There was no time left for fear or doubt. Lex pulled Esrin close, his hand gripping her shoulder tightly, feeling her ragged, hot breaths on his neck as they rushed out of their sleeping quarters. Just outside, the hallway was already teeming with armored figures, weapons flashing with electric light. Alliance Special Forces and at least 2 station guards moved in formation, cutting off every exit like the blades of a pair of shears. Lex, thinking quickly, darted through a side door that led down into the maintenance levels, his grip never loosening on Esrin's wrist as if afraid that, if he let go for even a second, she would disappear into the planet's eternal ice. "This way," Lex whispered, his voice dry and urgent, heart pounding wildly. He knew every nook and cranny of Delta 14. This place had once been his home, where he learned how to survive, to fight, and to vanish. The maintenance corridor was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 to squeeze through, the dim light throwing tense shadows over Esrin's face. In that flickering glow, Lex noticed something strange. A faint red glow burning at the back of Esrin's neck, like an ember beneath her shimmering skin. "Your mark, why is it glowing?" Lex asked quietly, pulling her along, glancing over his shoulder. Esrin bit her lip, holding onto her composure. "It's a biosignal. When I'm close to danger, it warns me. If they scan me, they'll know exactly who I am." Lex didn't reply, his mind spinning with a reckless idea. They had to get out of range of all bioscanners before any system could identify Esrin's DNA. If not, there would be no escape for either of them. They ducked around a corner and sprinted down to the storage level, where Lex had stashed emergency supplies long ago. He swiftly opened a hidden panel in the wall and pulled out 2 black protective cloaks, the kind coated with nanofibers to block biological scans. "Put this on. It'll mask your vital readings for a few minutes at least." Esrin's eyes widened as her icy fingers fumbled to pull the hood over her head. Lex glanced at her. In that instant, he saw the storm of fear, trust, and burning determination in the depths of Esrin's eyes. "Do you trust me?" She nodded, gripping his hand in silence. That touch, fleeting between the cold and the danger, made Lex feel more deeply than ever what it meant to bond. This was a connection that went beyond any law of the Alliance or the limits of their species. Footsteps echoed behind them. Lex pulled Esrin sharply into an old ventilation shaft, a relic from some forgotten war, once used for smuggling goods. The air was stifling, but here, at least, they were beyond the scanner's reach. In the cramped darkness, Lex and Esrin pressed together, listening only to their breath and the thunder of their hearts. Esrin rested her head on Lex's shoulder, whispering, "If they catch me, it won't just be a firing squad. They'll take me back to the council. They'll extract my memories, experiment on my body, try to study my ability to bond with a human. I've seen others. What happens to them?" Lex hugged her tighter, his hand gently stroking her back, feeling every curve through the thin layer of fabric. "I won't let that happen, I swear." She looked up at him, her silver eyes shimmering between hope and despair. "Why? Because I asked you to pretend to be my husband." Lex shook his head, a soft smile on his lips, his voice a deep promise. "From the moment you grabbed my hand under the ice, I haven't wanted to let you go." In the freezing tunnel, Esrin trembled, not only with fear, but with the overwhelming honesty of Lex's words. She pressed closer, chin on his shoulder, her hand searching for his, fingers entwined. In the darkness, their scents mingled, warmth seeping into every crease of their hands, a comfort that no scanner or law could ever replicate or police. She whispered, her breath hot against Lex's ear, "If you survive this night, I won't run anymore." Lex didn't speak. He simply drew Esrin closer and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead, not to fool anyone but to reassure himself. "I won't let you go, no matter the cost." Outside, the noise faded. The teams above were searching elsewhere, abandoning this old tunnel as a dead end. Lex seized the lull, guiding Esrin through a ventilation duct out toward the edge of the base. Both were exhausted, covered in grime and machine oil, but if they could just slip past the security zone, they might truly have a chance. At the final exit, Lex turned, gazing deep into Esrin's eyes. "Out here is the dead zone. No machines can save us, no signals, no laws. If you're not sure, you can still go back." Esrin shook her head, pride and defiance shining in her gaze. "I'd rather die out there with you than be a lab specimen in a glass cage." Lex nodded, a crooked, determined smile, the kind only a man who's gambled everything for the last person he cares about can muster. They crawled out through a narrow gap at the base of the wall. The outside air sliced at their skin, the wind driving a blizzard of ice over any tracks. Lex wrapped his cloak tighter around Esrin, and the two of them supported each other toward the frozen forest at the station's edge, the site of Lex's secret emergency shelter. With every step, Lex could feel his heart pounding, not just from the terror of being caught, but from the feeling of Esrin leaning on him, her body shivering against his, not knowing if it was from cold, exhaustion, or pure will to live. Beneath the cloak, her hand found his, their fingers interlocking, gripping tight like a lifeline in a world of ice. "Lex," Esrin murmured, her voice almost lost to the northern wind. "Yes. But if I have to die, I want it to be in your arms." He stopped, searching her eyes, saying nothing, only holding her close, kissing her hair, breathing in the mingled scent of snow and skin, searing and aching. They slumped together in the deep snow, holding each other, shivering, breath coming in sharp gasps, heedless of the dangers still circling them. Just then, a flashlight beam swept across the distance, A patrol had found the exit. Lex ducked, shielding Esrin with his body. They held their breath, hearts pounding. The smallest slip, a single noise, could mean the end. Time seemed to stop. Lex felt his blood freezing in his veins, each second a test of survival. Esrin pressed her face to his chest, whispering so softly he barely heard. "I can feel your pheromones, they're mixing in my blood. If I have to die, I want to truly be yours." Lex turned to her. There was pain and helplessness in his eyes, but also a burning, undeniable need. In that moment, on the razor's edge between life and death, he couldn't hold back. He kissed Esrin, fierce and primal, as if this was the only moment he'd ever have to truly live. That kiss was more than a farewell. It was a confirmation. Two souls, two bodies, were now truly bonded, inseparable, even if it meant leaving everything else behind. When the patrol lights faded, Lex and Esrin rose silently and helped each other through the frozen forest to the shelter. For the first time since they met, there was no talk of pretending, no mention of lies or laws, only the raw desire to live, to love, to be free, even if just for a fleeting moment in this cold universe. At the hidden snow cave, Lex struck a match, coaxing a small fire to life. Esrin curled up in a blanket, her eyes sparkling in the firelight, her breath mingling with Lex's, so close nothing could ever part them. "Are you cold?" Lex asked softly, holding her close. Esrin shook her head, a thin smile on her lips. "No, now all I feel is warmth." She pulled Lex down, kissing him deeply and passionately, leaving every fear and doubt behind. In the flickering firelight, their bodies entwined. The boundary between human and alien dissolved, leaving only the shared rhythm of two hearts rediscovering life amidst the ruins of the frozen wasteland. The night wind outside the tent howled, whipping clouds of white frost against every crack of the flimsy roof. But inside, Lex and Esrin seemed to be cut off from that harsh reality, sealed away in a warm, fragile world. The wavering firelight dancing over Esrin's silver-blue skin, over Lex's sunburned shoulders marked by scars. Time in the tiny shelter thickened into something dense, with nothing left but the sound of breath, the thrum of hearts, and the depth of their gazes locked on each other. Lex leaned back against a wooden plank, his eyes quietly watching Esrin wrapped in her fur blanket beside the fire. Her hair was a tangled halo, the dark stains on her cheeks slowly fading. She looked both delicate and distant, yet somehow this only deepened his sense of attachment. She no longer shivered from cold. Now she trembled from the intensity of his gaze and each careful touch. After a long while, Esrin whispered, "Lex, do you still want to ask about the mark on my back?" He was surprised, curiosity darkening his eyes. "What is it?" She was silent for a moment, then slowly let the blanket slip and turned her back to him. The firelight flickered over an intricate red pattern, alive with biological lines just beneath her shoulder blade. The strange curves and alien symbols seemed to move with Esrin's every breath. Each deep inhale made the mark glow with a warm amber, then fade. Lex gently placed his hand on the mark, feeling beneath his fingertips something heated, far warmer than human skin or anything he'd ever known, even among alien races. "Were you born with it?" Esrin shook her head, her voice barely more than wind. "It's the symbiotic crest of House Vale. It only appears when a member of the royal family is stripped of status and branded as no longer of pure blood. It's like a curse, but at the same time the only chance for survival for an exile." Lex listened intently, his hand stroking softly over Esrin's back. "Why does your body adapt so quickly to human pheromones and genes?" "Because this mark, it's a bridge. When it's triggered by a living bond, a real one, not just pretending, it unlocks biological pathways, letting my body accept symbiotic signals from the chosen partner. But it only works with contact that's deep and real enough." She hesitated, eyes wavering between anxiety and hope. "That means if I truly bond with you, even just once, my body will start to change. It'll adapt, gradually transforming pheromones, metabolic rhythms, even DNA, until the royal system can't detect me anymore. But in return, I'll never be myself again. I won't be pure, won't ever be accepted by my kind. I'll always be a hybrid. Lex sat quietly for a long moment. That was a steep price, but also Esrin's only path to survival. Are you afraid? Esrin smiled faintly, and to her own surprise, tears streaked down her cheeks, her voice shaking. I don't even know what I'm afraid of anymore. I used to think I'd die freezing beneath the ice, or cut apart on a lab table. I never dared imagine someone would hold me with their whole heart, never thought of freedom. If I had to choose between being a ghost of House Vale or being myself, even if only for a moment, I want to choose being with you. Lex couldn't hold back any longer. He pulled her close, gathering her into his arms. Esrin's hot tears soaked into his shirt, mingling with the scent of skin, smoke, fire, and that strange pheromone that now he couldn't tell whose it was anymore. Their bodies instinctively wrapped around each other. No more distance, no more boundaries. Lex kissed her neck, each touch growing warmer on her cool skin, every gasp and small tremor speaking louder than words. Esrin turned to face him, her silver eyes blurred with tears, her lips trembling, but her gaze blazing now with the need to live. Lex, she breathed, fingers slipping down to his shirt buttons. If this is our only night, let me truly belong to you, no more pretending. Lex didn't answer with words. He bent and kissed her, fierce and tender at once. This time there was no hesitation, no purpose but their raw longing to truly merge. The first caresses were hesitant and trembling, but soon turned desperate, instinctive. Lex's hands roamed her back, her waist, each scar glowing under his touch. Every breath, every shiver, every brush of lips against skin washed away old memories, leaving only the here and now, naked, burning, and utterly irreversible. They made love in the coldest night of Novaris 6, surrounded by the howling wind and a fire guttering low, between despair and hope, curse and salvation. As Lex became one with Esrin, the mark on her back blazed gold and red, spreading over her skin like a galaxy swirling into existence in the darkness. Esrin sobbed, not knowing if it was from pain, pleasure, or the pure, wild relief of finally having a home, finally having someone to belong to. Afterward, they lay pressed together, Lex's arm wrapped around her from behind, his hand resting on her still warm mark, chin nestled in her hair. They said nothing more, just listening to the merged rhythm of their hearts, their breath blending until everything outside the little tent ceased to exist. Close to dawn, Esrin was the first to wake. She sat up, pulling on Lex's jacket, tiptoeing outside. The snow covered everything, sky and earth as one. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat. Different now, her breathing changed too. Lex's scent, his warmth left in the jacket, made her tremble and feel a new, inexplicable safety. It was in that moment she knew her choice was real. She was no longer a Vale, no longer an exiled princess, no longer a lab specimen. She was just Esrin, a woman who had bonded forever with a human man, ready to leave every past behind to live for this moment, for a future of her own. When Lex stepped out, his gaze was wonderfully gentle. "Aren't you cold?" Esrin smiled, diving into his arms, pressing her face into his chest. "No, not as long as you're here." Dawn broke over the thin ice. A new day began, and with it, a decisive moment. The Vale Council had started detecting anomalies. Outlying beacons around Delta 14 were sending constant breach alerts. Lex knew the real storm was still ahead, but he was no longer afraid. He finally understood that the only thing that could protect them was not lies or documents, but the true bond between them, a bond that rose above all rules, all scars, all differences. Lex squeezed Esrin's hand, looking out toward the horizon glowing above the snow. "No matter what happens, I won't let you go." Esrin held him tightly, pride and tenderness mingling in her eyes. "Me neither, Lex. Even if I become a hybrid, even if I lose everything else, I won't regret a thing." And so, at the edge of the frozen universe, for the first time, They felt a fire kindled deep inside, a fire that nothing in the world could ever extinguish. The early morning blizzard battered the ground of Novaris 6, erasing every trace behind it, yet it couldn't stop the survey ships from sweeping infrared beams across the outskirts of Outpost Delta 14. In the haze of jamming signals, a barrage of warning messages flooded the battered radio on Lex's belt. Strange identification codes from orbit, erratic movement maps, all unmistakable signs. The Vale Royal Council had caught Esrin's scent. Inside the small tent, the air still held the warmth of the cherished night before. Lex sat, methodically checking every bullet, every bandage, every fake signal transmitter. His heart pounded not only from worry, but also from a fierce, simmering resolve unlike anything he'd ever felt. Every glance at Esrin, quiet by the fire, gazing into the snow, he saw in her both light and something unbreakable. Esrin knew exactly what was coming. Deep in her bones, she could feel a strange surge of energy stirring the mark on her back. Now, that mark was no longer just a burden but a source of new strength, a reservoir of life. She stepped over, sitting beside Lex, placing her hand on his shoulder. "We'll have to run again, won't we?" she asked softly, her voice calmer than ever before. Lex nodded, eyes fixed on the digital map. "They might not just send special forces. They might send people you once trusted, those who know your every weakness." Esrin squeezed Lex's hand, her gaze unwavering. "Then I won't be Esrin Vale of the past. I'll be whoever I choose, to be yours and my own." Lex turned to her, fingers threading through her silvery hair, drawing her close, pressing a deep kiss to her lips. "I don't care who you are as long as you stay with me. No matter your blood, no matter what they call you." Outside, the engine's roar grew louder. The warning light on the tent blinked frantically. Someone was scanning each area with drones. Lex knew they had less than an hour before every escape route was sealed off. They packed quickly. Lex led Esrin through blinding snowfields, heading for the cliffs, where an old bunker from the war still waited. Esrin said nothing, staying close at his side, her fingers hooked in his belt as if she feared he might vanish at any moment. They hurried past rocky outcrops, the wailing from above and searchlights sweeping the ground like giant eyes hunting for any trace. Just as they neared the bunker, a distant explosion shook the earth, proof that a strike team had found the tent. Lex didn't look back, only pulled Esrin to run faster. Inside the bunker, Lex checked the rusty locks, pouring all his remaining strength into every move, while Esrin slumped to the floor, breath ragged. Her hand pressed to her back, feeling the symbiotic mark flare, as if someone was activating it from afar. "Lex, if I'm separated from you, the Veil system will recognize my pure blood again. I'll lose everything I've had with you, memories, scent, emotion, and they'll drag me back, erasing every trace of our bond." Lex turned, gripping her fragile shoulders. "They can't erase you from me, Esrin. If they tear us apart, I'll fight to the end to win you back. Even if I have to be an outlaw, even if I die on this frozen world." Esrin's eyes shone with tears, but it was no longer fear. It was the tears of someone who had just heard a promise bigger than any vow. She threw her arms around Lex, lips searching for his, breath coming quick and hot. The warmth of his body, the familiar scent of his skin jolted her out of her trance. "Lex, if this is our last moment, let me be yours once more." In the dark bunker, they became one again, mingling bloodlines, memories, pain, and passion. Lex lifted Esrin onto the cold concrete slab, their clothes scattered in the shadows, their touches urgent and gentle as a last kiss goodbye. Esrin wept at the peak of pleasure, the mark on her back bursting into radiant gold, passing through Lex a sensation of burning, cleansing heat. They clung to each other for what felt like forever, refusing to let go, while engines, explosions, and sirens thundered above them. The clash of metal outside startled Lex back. He pulled Esrin into his chest, both of them panting, exchanging a look that held no doubt, no halfway measures. "It's time, Esrin." She nodded, wiped her tears, and gripped Lex's hand tightly. The bunker door burst open. Before them stood three figures, one in a silver-violet cloak, a royal crest on his brow, two more, armed special operatives to the teeth. "Esrin Vale, your time running is over." The cloaked man's voice was cold, his gaze dripping contempt. Esrin lifted her chin back straight, the symbiotic mark glowing beneath the flashlight. "I'm not your Esrin anymore." The cloaked man sneered. "You are Vale blood. No one breaks the purity." Lex moved to shield Esrin, his hand tight around his makeshift plasma gun. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The cloaked man nodded. "That can be arranged." The soldiers charged. Lex fired. One shot struck a shoulder, blue blood spraying. The other crashed Lex against the wall, striking his head. In the chaos, Esrin surged forward, pouring all her strength into the symbiotic mark. A wave of golden-red light blazed, bursting through the bunker like a small supernova. For a heartbeat, everything froze. When the light faded, Lex was still on his feet, blood trickling from his brow, but his eyes blazed with determination. Esrin knelt beside him, trembling but no longer weak. The cloaked man was sprawled, burned by the light. The two guards fled in terror. Esrin stood, staring straight into the eyes of someone who'd once been family. "I have chosen. I belong to him. I am no one's tool, no one's experiment, no one's shame. I am free. Even as a hybrid, even as an outsider, I am free." Lex stepped forward, gathering Esrin in his arms. They stood together in the cold bunker, hearts burning with a fire that could never be extinguished. Outside, the blizzard faded. In each other's eyes, they knew, even if they had to keep running, even if danger still waited, they truly belonged to each other. Nothing could divide them, not law, not blood, not fear. Leaving the bunker, Lex helped Esrin into the pale morning light. On the snowy cliff, the two looked down into a misty valley. There, hope and freedom waited, a promise for a future that belonged only to them. Lex leaned close, whispering in Esrin's ear, "From now on, you're Esrin Carden." She laughed through her tears, pulled him close, and kissed him long and deep, as if etching his name into her soul. "I've never wished for any other name." And beneath the frozen sky, the two former fugitives finally became truly free. Not the remnants of a bloodline, but the embodiment of choice, of love, and of a trust that could never be destroyed. The snowstorm had passed, leaving Novaris 6 awash in a pure white dawn. The first pale rays of sunlight glimmered on the icy surface, scattering into thousands of sparkling shards, as if welcoming the survivors stepping out from an endless night. Atop the mountain, Lex Carden and Esrin, now Esrin Carden, helped each other across snow-covered rocks, leaving behind a past filled with pursuit and pain, and heading toward a valley where no footprint had ever marked the ground. They built a small house at the forest's edge, its roof patched together with old planks and scavenged metal sheets from the outpost, its hearth always warm and glowing through the frozen winter. Each morning, Lex would hunt, set traps, and repair the heating system, while Esrin gradually learned to tend the food garden, fix broken comms equipment. No longer a princess of Vale, nor a lab specimen, but a woman of freedom, belonging to no one but herself. Sometimes Esrin would spend hours by the window, gazing out into the mist, a hand pressed to her chest where her heart beat strong and at peace. The mark on her back faded from the red gold of pain to a soft blue, signs of perfect harmony, of a new life, neither pure nor bound, never to be hunted again. Lex often sat behind her, gently brushing his lips against the mark, whispering, "We have nothing left to fear, Esrin." With time, the traces of war and the days of being hunted faded away. News of a hybrid bloodline between a human and Vale's royal house once shook the alliance councils, but even that was soon buried by greater political intrigues. Those who had hunted them were either erased or quietly realized it was hopeless to find two souls hidden somewhere among hundreds of millions of miles of ice and forest. One rare spring came knocking. The snow melted, and the first strange grass shoots poked up around their little house. Esrin stood by the door, hand resting on her dress, her belly slightly rounded. the sign of a new life forming, born of love and relentless struggle between two once labeled outcasts. Lex approached from afar, carrying a bundle of firewood on his shoulder. When Esrin turned and smiled at him, he dropped everything and ran to embrace her from behind, nuzzling the silver hair that had now deepened in color. "Are you tired?" Esrin shook her head, resting against Lex's chest, her eyes shining with gentle, peaceful light. "No, I've never felt such peace before. My body has fully adapted, Lex. Both me and this child, we belong here with you." Lex leaned down, placing his hand over her belly, feeling the heartbeat of two lives merged together. For a long moment, they said nothing, just savoring the simplicity and depth of each second. At night, the small house glowed with firelight. Lex and Esrin lay beside each other on the wooden bed, breath mingling, heartbeats side by side. Not fugitives any longer, but two people building a new future with their own hands and will. Every scar on Lex's skin, every line of Esrin's mark, were now only memories, testaments to the fact that they had fought, loved, and dared to become what no one else ever had. That night, as the soft wind murmured outside, Lex whispered in Esrin's ear, "You've given me more than anyone ever could, freedom, a home, a family. Do you have any regrets?" Esrin turned to him, pressing her cool hand to his cheek, her lips barely brushing his, lingering on every beat, every breath. "If I could start all over again, I'd still run to you. I'd still choose to be here, to be myself, to be yours." Lex smiled, pulling Esrin close, kissing her forehead, his hand stroking her hair and shoulders as if afraid they might vanish one day. But he knew, now they were one. No force could separate them, no fear, no prison. Years passed, and on Novaris 6, in a small valley lush with green, people still whispered about a strange family. The human man living with his silver-skinned wife, her eyes sharp as ice but her heart warm as fire. They had a child, skin a brownish blue, hair silver streaked with deep shades, eyes carrying both parents' colors. That child grew up free, loved, never knowing the chains of blood or law. Esrin often told her child about her own journey, about bitter winters, about choices, about a love that surpassed fear and the universe's prejudices. Lex taught their child survival, creation, love, protection, and most of all, the courage to choose freedom, even at any price. One evening, sitting on the doorstep of their little home, Esrin leaned against Lex, her eyes looking up at the stars. "What do you think tomorrow will be like?" she asked quietly. Lex gently squeezed her hand. "Tomorrow, as long as I have you and our child, anywhere in any form, I'll call that home." Esrin smiled, nestling into Lex's chest, listening to his heartbeat, her own and that of a new generation rising. Not a legacy of pain, but the start of happiness, freedom, and a future without limits. And outside, under the new dawn, Novaris 6 glistened blue and white, welcoming those who once were victims, once were fugitives, now the pioneers of a new era, one of harmony, freedom, and hope.